The sun hung low over the rugged training ground, casting long shadows across the cracked dirt and scattered debris. Sergeant Riley moved with practiced precision, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement, her team following closely. Behind their boots, kicking up clouds of dust, the air heavy with the scent of sweat and metal tension hanging like a storm cloud ready to break. She had led countless drills and operations before, yet something in the silence felt different. A subtle shift in the wind, the faint rustle of clothing against sand that told her danger was near. Her squad fanned out across the clearing, keeping low weapons raised, their hands communicating through subtle gestures. Riley signaled them to pause, crouching. Behind a toppled crate, her gaze locking onto the narrow alley where a shadow flitted across the far wall. The enemy had been clever, hiding behind the terrain, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She tightened her grip on her rifle. Yet before she could react, a sharp whistle cut through the air, and the squad froze. A dozen armed figures emerged from the shadows, moving faster than anticipated. Before anyone could shout a single warning, the attackers surged forward, disarming her team with practiced efficiency. In moments, rifles were ripped from hands, packs snatched from backs, and weapons slammed into the ground. Riley felt her pulse hammering her chest as her own rifle was wrenched away from her fingers, the cold metal leaving her. Grasp, a sense of disbelief washing over her. Yet there was no time to dwell. The enemy moved to surround them methodically, cutting off escape routes. She glanced at her squad, eyes wide with fear, some backing toward cover, others frozen in shock. She swallowed hard, realizing they were momentarily outnumbered and outgunned. Riley forced herself to breathe. She had trained for moments like this, her mind running through contingency after contingency. None of them included being completely unarmed. Yet she had to act. She signaled her team to stay calm, keeping low, watching the enemy closely for any pattern, any hint of hesitation. She scanned the terrain, noting crates, barrels, and loose debris that could be used as shields or projectiles, her legs trembling. She pushed herself into position behind a low wall, observing the attackers. Their movements coordinated as if rehearsed. They believed their advantage complete, unaware that she still had the skills to turn the tide. The first assault came fast. A figure lunged toward her, trying to pin her against the wall. Riley sidestepped at the last possible moment, grabbing a loose piece of pipe from the ground, swinging it with precision, catching him off guard. The man stumbled back, cursing. His surprise giving her a fraction of a second to reposition. She could see the rest of the attackers glancing at the disruption, confusion flickering across their faces. Her squad beginning to recover their wits. Inspired by her audacity, she knew she had to capitalize on the moment before they regrouped. With the enemy distracted, Riley sprang forward, her movements fluid, calculated. Despite the pain and adrenaline coursing through her veins, she ducked and weaved narrowly, avoiding a blow from a rifle butt. The wind of it brushing past her face, she struck with the pipe again, a sharp crack echoing across the ground. One of the attackers collapsing to the sand, clutching his arm, the others hesitating, their confidence shaken for a moment. Riley had their attention, and she could feel the tide shifting. She gestured to her squad, urging them to act now to reclaim ground while the enemy was off balance. A sharp whistle cut through the chaos, signaling reinforcements from the attackers, their numbers appearing larger than before. Riley cursed under her breath. Scanning quickly, she spotted a narrow passage between crates that could allow her squad to escape or flank the enemy, using their confusion to their advantage. She pointed toward it, signaling her team to follow. She knew that if they moved too slowly, the reinforcements would close the gap and cut them off completely. The air thick with tension, the cries of combat echoing in the distance, she felt her pulse hammering. Not from fear, but from the exhilaration of the challenge. Her mind raced, calculating every possible outcome. Each movement a balance of risk and reward. She could see the attackers regrouping, gathering their strength for another strike. Their eyes, sharp, watching her every twitch, waiting for a mistake. Riley forced herself to focus, the sweat dripping into her eyes, stinging. But not enough to distract her, she whispered under her breath. Keep moving, keep calm, keep fighting, every instinct honed. From years of training guiding her actions as she prepared to make the next move. The squad moved as one under her direction, sliding between barrels and crates, using shadows and debris for cover. Every step measured, every breath controlled. The enemy hesitated momentarily, giving Riley the opening she needed. She grabbed another piece of debris, swinging it with lethal accuracy, catching another attacker across the shoulder, sending him sprawling to the sand. A cheer erupted quietly from her team, emboldened by her courage, the balance of power beginning to shift, but she knew the victory was far from complete. The reinforcements still approaching the passage. Her heart racing, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, knowing every second counted and a single mistake could cost them dearly. Riley pressed forward, ducking behind a low wall, observing the enemy's movements, calculating her strike. She noticed a gap forming between two of the attackers, a fleeting moment, an opportunity to exploit. She gestured to her squad, readying them to act together. The tension electric around them, the air thick with dust and the scent of adrenaline as she prepared to make her next move. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the alley where the reinforcements were poised, and she knew that the next few seconds would determine whether they survived or were overwhelmed. The entire squad waiting on her signal and the enemy closing in faster than ever. A whistle shrieked, and the reinforcements surged closer. Riley took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the sun on her back, the pounding of her heart echoing in her ears. She gritted her teeth and readied herself for the unarmed stand that would decide everything. She could see the attackers closing from every angle, her squad behind her waiting for her command. She tightened her grip on the makeshift weapon, feeling the sweat and blood coating her hands, her eyes scanning for the smallest advantage. Every fiber of her being focused on survival and victory. She whispered to herself, "This ends now," and as the first enemy lunged, she prepared to fight without hesitation, knowing that what came next would either secure their escape or plunge them into disaster. Riley pressed forward, her body trembling with adrenaline and pain, the pipe swinging in her hands as the attackers surged toward her, her team moving in unison behind her. Every step a careful calculation. Each breath measured. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, every eye fixed on her every movement, waiting for her to make the wrong decision. The desert air thick with dust, sweat, and the acrid smell of gunpowder, the attackers advancing fast, confident that their advantage was absolute, until Riley made the first move. She ducked under a swinging rifle, knocking it aside with a sharp jab of the pipe, and pivoted, striking the man at the shoulder, his cry cutting through the chaos as he fell back, giving her a fleeting opening to maneuver. She signaled her team to split into smaller groups, taking cover behind crates and barrels, moving silently, yet with lethal purpose, their eyes wide with fear, yet burning with determination. Riley's mind raced, calculating trajectories, escape routes, and the enemy patterns every second, stretching into an eternity as the first waves of reinforcements began to arrive from the far end of the alley. The attackers regrouped, momentarily confused by the sudden ferocity of an unarmed woman leading a counter-assault. Riley seized the moment, her hands shaking, but her grip firm, swinging again, striking another attacker across the knee, sending him crashing to the ground. She grabbed a loose chain from a nearby post, swinging it like a whip, catching another off guard. The team, watching her movements, gained confidence, taking the first offensive steps, rallying behind her energy. She could see the enemy hesitation, the small glimmer of fear forming in their eyes as the realization dawned that she was not easily defeated. Bullets whistled past from distant rifles, the sound cutting through the thick air. She ducked behind a barrel, using it for cover, calculating each movement, her body screaming with exertion and pain. Her legs Burning from the previous scramble, her lungs aching from the effort, she could see the narrow alley stretching ahead, the only path for reinforcements to reach the attackers, and she knew that if she could hold this choke point, she could turn the tide of the fight. She whispered instructions to her squad, guiding them silently, signaling each movement precisely. One attacker broke away, attempting to flank her through a narrow side passage. Riley spun, using the momentum to swing the chain, catching him across the chest and sending him sprawling into a stack of crates, the sound echoing harshly as dust and splinters flew into the air. She pressed forward, moving low, using her elbows and forearms to propel herself over sand and debris. Her squad following in her shadow, improvising weapons from broken crates and loose metal rods. Every second a gamble, every move calculated. She could hear the distant roar of additional reinforcements approaching the alley. But for now, she had the advantage. The enemy trapped between her and the narrowing passage. Riley felt the rush of adrenaline masking the pain from her bruises and scratches. Her vision narrowed, focusing only on the enemy directly ahead. She spotted a cluster of attackers moving to regroup behind a pile of debris. She signaled her team to advance. Two men moved forward, using pieces of scrap metal as shields. Another picked up a discarded baton to swing at anyone who approached. The path was chaotic, yet every move coordinated under her direction. The enemy, now realizing that their advantage was slipping, their confidence faltering for the first time in the engagement. She pivoted around a toppled crate, striking a man in the side with the pipe and using his moment of shock to shove him toward his comrades, causing a brief pile-up. She could hear the grunts and curses of the attackers, the air filled with dust and shouts, her team moving swiftly, taking advantage of each stagger. And opening, Riley could feel their morale rising as they began to fight back with increasing confidence. She knew that if they held this momentum, the alley would be theirs, and the attackers forced to retreat or surrender. The reinforcements were now visible, moving rapidly through the far end of the alley. Riley counted them mentally, estimating their numbers and positioning. She could see two trying to flank from the high ground. She grabbed a broken plank, swinging it at the closest one. Catching him across the arm, the man yelped, stumbling back, creating a domino effect. The others hesitated a critical moment. She gestured for her team to move toward the flanks. Exploiting the confusion, she could see them hesitating, uncertain now, vulnerable. She pressed forward, her movements fluid and deliberate, each strike precise despite the fatigue, her lungs burning with every breath. A man lunged at her from the side. She ducked, rolling under his swing, swinging the plank at his legs, sending him sprawling. She could see her squad mimicking her movements, their attacks coordinated under her leadership. Despite being unarmed, they moved with a deadly rhythm, striking at knees, shoulders, and arms, any vulnerable point, the alley now alive with the chaos of close combat. Riley noticed the remaining attackers in the center, their formation weakening, their hesitation, spreading confusion. She could feel the tide turning, the victory within reach, but one wrong move could still spell disaster. For the squad, Riley climbed over a low crate, positioning herself to block the final attackers from advancing further. She grabbed a loose pipe, swinging at one and pushing another back toward the corner of the alley. The air thick with the smell of sweat, dust, and blood, her muscles screaming from exertion. But she refused to stop, her team rallying behind her, shouts of encouragement and the clash of improvised weapons echoing in the confined space. Every second critical, every move a lifeline. She could see the last attackers hesitating, realizing that their unarmed opposition was now a coordinated force under her command. The final wave of reinforcements paused at the entrance, peering into the alley, assessing the chaos, their confidence. Waning, Riley motioned for her team to hold the center, creating a defensive line, while small groups moved to flank the attackers from behind. Every movement calculated, every strike deliberate, the enemy unsure how to proceed, the tension electric. As the seconds stretched out in anticipation, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest, her arms trembling, but determination fueling her each action, knowing that if she maintained control, the alley and her squad would emerge victorious. The attackers made a desperate push toward her position. Riley swung the pipe, striking one and shoving another back into the wall, her team pressing forward, exploiting every opening, the confined space amplifying their effectiveness. The reinforcements. Still outside, unsure how to enter the chaotic melee, Riley could see the fear flickering in their eyes, a hesitation that had not been there before. She gestured for a coordinated strike, her squad moving in perfect, unarmed synchronization, every movement designed to overwhelm and disorient the enemy. The balance of power tipping irrevocably in their favor. Riley took a moment to breathe, shifting her weight and scanning the alley. The attackers now disorganized and demoralized, she could see. Her team pressing the advantage, driving them back toward the exit. The narrow corridor, a trap for anyone unprepared. Each improvised strike landing precisely. She knew that if they could hold this moment, the remaining enemies would have no choice. But to retreat or surrender, the tension hung thick in the air, a final confrontation looming, and she braced herself for the decisive moment that would determine the outcome of the battle. Riley pressed forward, her body trembling from exhaustion. Every muscle screaming from hours of continuous movement, the alley littered with debris, broken crates, and scattered weapons. She moved low, using the environment to her advantage, her hands gripping a jagged piece of metal like a sword, each swing. Calculated and precise, striking at the attackers who dared to advance her squad, following closely behind, mimicking her movements, striking with improvised weapons, each blow aimed at vulnerable spots, knees, elbows, and shoulders, the confined space, amplifying the effectiveness of their attacks. The enemy had begun to hesitate, their formations, broken confusion flickering across their faces. Riley could see the fear in their eyes, the certainty that they had total control slipping away. She signaled to her squad to split into two groups, one moving forward to flank, while the other pressed the center. The sound of grunts and metal striking flesh echoing through the alley, each moment a gamble. Each strike a measure of survival she could feel. Her lungs burning, every breath a struggle, her arms trembling from the exertion, yet determination and instinct pushing her onward. One attacker lunged from the side. Riley ducked and swung the metal bar, catching him across the ribs, the crack echoing. Sharply, his cry of pain cutting through the air, giving her a brief opening to push past him. She rolled to avoid a kick, striking back with the bar to the shoulder. Another attacker tried to block her path. She twisted her body, leveraging her weight, and knocked him into a pile of crates. They tumbled noisily, scattering debris across the alley, the chaos giving her squad the chance to press forward, exploiting the disarray. The air thick with dust, sweat, and the scent of blood, every sense heightened, every movement critical. The reinforcements at the far end of the alley had paused, uncertain. Now the enemy trapped between Riley and the narrowing passage, their confidence faltering. She could see the hesitation and knew that if she acted decisively, she could break their morale completely. She signaled her squad to press forward using hand gestures, every movement rehearsed mentally from years of training, improvisation, and instinct. The attackers now on edge, every eye darting from one potential threat to another. The tight space leaving no room for error, Riley pivoted around a toppled crate, striking one attacker across the arm, the man collapsing onto the sand as another lunged. She ducked, rolling under his swing and using the momentum to strike his knee, sending him sprawling. She could hear the grunts of her squad as they mimicked her movements, striking at exposed areas, the air thick with tension and anticipation. The alley alive with the clash of bodies, metal against metal, and the cries of pain and surprise, each second a test of endurance and strategy. Her mind racing, calculating the positions of every opponent, every potential threat. She spotted a group attempting to flank from a narrow passage on the side. She signaled two squad members to intercept while she pressed the center using the pipe to block the advance of those directly in front of her. The attackers struggling to maintain cohesion, their confidence eroding rapidly. The tight quarters working in Riley's favor, every improvised strike weakening their morale. She could feel the momentum shifting the balance of power in her favor, yet aware that one mistake could undo everything she had fought to achieve. The attackers attempted to regroup at the center. Of the alley, Riley lunged forward, striking one across the shoulder and shoving another into a pile of debris, her squad following with precise coordination, exploiting every opening. Each movement a lesson in improvisation and resilience, the narrow alley leaving the enemy with little room to maneuver. They stumbled over each other, creating chaos. Riley moved fluidly among them, striking at weak points, forcing them back further inch by inch toward the exit. She could see the reinforcements approaching. Hesitating at the far end, unsure how to enter the chaotic melee, her eyes scanned the alley, calculating distances, angles, and weaknesses. She gestured for her squad to press the attack, creating a pincer effect, the attackers trapped and disoriented. The air filled with dust, sweat, and the sounds of combat, each strike landing with purpose and precision, the momentum of the battle now entirely on her side. She felt a surge of determination, pushing her to continue, despite the exhaustion and pain won. Attacker lunged recklessly. She sidestepped and delivered a powerful strike to his knee, sending him crashing into a crate. The sound echoing sharply. Another swung a piece of debris at her. She ducked and countered, knocking him back, her squad closing. In on the flanks, striking at exposed points, the chaos overwhelming the enemy. The alley now a controlled battlefield. Despite the lack of traditional weapons, Riley's leadership and skill turning the tide, every improvised maneuver calculated, every strike delivering maximum effect. The attackers' confusion and fear growing with each passing second. Riley pressed forward, noticing the last stronghold of attackers attempting to hold a narrow choke point. She gestured to her squad, signaling a coordinated assault. Using the combined force of their strikes to overwhelm the resistance, she lunged with the metal bar, striking one attacker across the shoulder, while another tripped over debris. Falling into the pile, the remaining few faltering hesitation in their movements visible, their confidence shattered. She pressed the attack, driving them backward inch by inch, her squad pressing in perfect unison, exploiting every opening with unarmed precision. The reinforcements now frozen at the far end of the alley. Uncertainty flickering across their faces, Riley could see the psychological advantage she had gained. The attackers trapped and demoralized, struggling to maintain cohesion, signaled her squad to hold the center, while small teams moved to cut off any escape routes. The alley a confined stage for a battle of skill and willpower. The attackers no longer confident of their victory every second. A measure of survival, every movement critical. Riley ducked under a swing from an attacker lunging forward, striking his ribs with the pipe. The man collapsing, gasping for breath. She rolled to avoid another blow, delivering a sharp strike to the shoulder of a second attacker. The sound of impact echoing against the walls of the alley, dust and debris swirling around them, her squad moving seamlessly with her every strike and maneuver coordinated under her direction. The tight space amplifying their effectiveness, enemy disoriented and demoralized their formation, shattered the momentum fully in Riley's favor. She could feel the end approaching the last attackers, faltering under the relentless pressure of her unarmed assault, her team moving as one coordinated. Force cutting off escape and forcing submission, every move, precise, every strike, deliberate, the chaos now under control, the alley echoing with the sounds of defeat from the enemy, the survivors retreating in disarray, Riley standing tall, despite exhaustion, her arms trembling from the effort, every breath a struggle, every heartbeat pounding, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins as the final opponents fell or fled, leaving her squad victorious but wary, aware that even after this, fight dangers still lurked. The alley now quiet, except for the heavy breathing of her team. Riley lowered the pipe, briefly scanning the area. The adrenaline slowly ebbing, leaving the ache of exertion and the soreness of muscles used beyond limit. Yet pride and relief washing over her, she could see the respect in the eyes of her squad, the realization that even unarmed she had led them to victory. a test of courage, skill, and resilience that none would forget the threat defeated. Yet the tension, lingering in the air as she knew the next challenge could arrive at any moment, and they must remain ready. Riley pressed forward, her body trembling with exhaustion, every muscle screaming from the relentless combat, the alley strewn with debris broken, crates and twisted metal. Each step a careful calculation, her hands gripping the jagged metal, tightly swinging at any attacker who advanced her squad, moving in unison behind her. Inspired by her courage, every strike precise, every movement deliberate. Despite the ache in their limbs and the sting of cuts and bruises, the attackers, now scattered and demoralized, tried to regroup their formations, broken and hesitant. Riley could see the fear flickering in their eyes, the confidence they had relied on crumbling with each precise strike, each coordinated maneuver. Her squad pressing the advantage, exploiting every opening, forcing the enemy back inch by inch, the narrow alley, amplifying the impact of each improvised weapon, each strike designed to weaken and disorient. Riley ducked under a swing from a metal pipe, striking the attacker across the ribs. He collapsed, gasping for breath. She rolled and pivoted, striking another across the shoulder, sending him into a pile of crates, dust, and debris scattering the alley, echoing sharply. Her squad moving seamlessly in her shadow, exploiting the chaos, the remaining attackers struggling to maintain any cohesion. The confined corridor leaving them vulnerable and exposed their confidence, faltering. The reinforcements outside the alley paused, uncertain how to enter the chaos. Riley could feel the psychological advantage shifting in her favor. She signaled for her squad to press forward using subtle gestures, every movement rehearsed. In her mind, each member reacting instinctively to the unfolding battle, the attackers trapped between her and the narrowing passage, their hesitation growing with each passing second, giving her the opportunity to further dismantle their ranks. And attacker lunged recklessly. Riley sidestepped, swinging the metal bar at his knee, sending him crashing into debris. She rolled under another swing, striking across the shoulder, her squad pressing the flanks, moving with lethal coordination, each improvised. Strike calculated to maximize confusion and weaken morale. The air thick with dust and the clash of metal echoing, every strike hitting its mark. The momentum shifting decisively, Riley pivoted around a toppled crate, spotting a small group of attackers, trying to hold a choke point. She signaled her squad to split forces, too, moving to intercept, while she pressed the center, swinging at anyone who advanced. The attackers, now hesitant, unsure how to proceed their formations, collapsing under relentless pressure. The adrenaline coursing through Riley, masking the burn in her muscles and the ache in her lungs. She pressed on undeterred. She could see the final stronghold of attackers attempting to maintain a narrow defensive position. She signaled for a coordinated assault, her squad moving as one, converging with perfect timing, overwhelming the remaining defenders. Riley lunged, striking one across the ribs, while another tripped over debris, falling to the sand, the remaining few faltering. Confusion evident in their movements, realizing the tide had turned decisively. She pressed forward, driving them back inch by inch, her squad following with precise coordination and determination. The reinforcements, still frozen outside, hesitated, their confidence broken. Riley gestured for her squad to maintain the choke point, cutting off any escape, the alley echoing with sounds of defeat. The remaining attackers stumbling over debris and each other disoriented and panicked, the confined corridor amplifying the effectiveness of every strike, her squad moving with lethal precision, exploiting every opening, Riley coordinating their actions without a word. Riley lunged at the last attackers, striking one across the shoulder, the man. Collapsing another, swinging a piece of metal, she ducked, rolling and countering, striking him across the ribs, the impact echoing through the alley, dust and debris filling the air, her squad pressing the flanks, cutting off escape routes, the final. Attackers unable to maintain cohesion, the tight corridor leaving them vulnerable. Riley moving fluidly among them, striking at weak points, her arms trembling, yet her resolve unbroken. Victory approaching. The alley grew quiet, except for the heavy, Breathing of her squad, Riley lowered the metal bar briefly, scanning the area. Her body aching from exertion, but her mind, alert eyes, searching for any sign of threat, the adrenaline ebbing, leaving the soreness of muscles used beyond their limit. She could see the respect in her squad, their faces reflecting awe at her skill and leadership. Despite being unarmed, the remaining attackers either fleeing or subdued, the tension lingering, the awareness that even after this fight dangers could still arise. Riley sank against a crate, catching her breath, surveying the alley, the debris a testament to the battle they had fought. She could feel the pride and relief washing over her, every member of her squad alive and victorious, the psychological advantage firmly in their favor, the remaining attackers either fleeing or defeated. She knew her leadership and improvisation had turned a desperate situation into triumph. Yet even in the quiet, she remained alert, knowing survival required constant vigilance. Every second, every movement mattered. The fight was never truly over. Riley stood in the alley, her body trembling from exhaustion, every muscle screaming from the hours of relentless combat, the dust and debris settling around her, her squad, moving cautiously beside her eyes, scanning for any remaining threat. The air heavy with the scent of sweat, blood, and dust. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, knowing that every decision she had made had kept her team alive. Her squad gathered around her, their faces reflecting awe and relief, their confidence renewed by the unarmed victory they had achieved under her command. Riley lowered the jagged metal bar, her hands raw and bleeding, yet her grip steady. She signaled for them to secure the area, while she moved, slowly checking for anyone who might still pose a threat. The alley quiet, except for their heavy breathing and the faint sound of distant reinforcements approaching. Riley felt a surge of pride. Tempered by exhaustion, she knew that the battle had tested every ounce of skill, courage, and determination she possessed. Each improvised strike, each maneuver executed perfectly. Despite the lack of weapons, the enemy neutralized the squad alive and victorious, the adrenaline slowly ebbing, leaving behind the ache and burn of muscles pushed beyond limit. She glanced at her team, each nod, and whispered of thanks, reinforcing the bond forged in combat. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows. Across the alley, Riley took a deep breath, her mind replaying every moment of the fight, the chaos, the fear, the determination, and the triumph. She knew that their survival and victory had depended not on weapons, but on skill, courage, and the refusal to yield. She straightened her back, ready to move forward, knowing that even after this battle, the challenges of survival would never end. Her eyes scanning the horizon, aware and vigilant, every second counting.